The sky was gray, covered in the soot, ash, and pollution of 1,000 years. The overgrown ruins of the city was gray too, as if the gray clouds covering the sky were casting their shadow over the world. Creeping vines and blooming flowers sprouted out of the crumbling buildings. Their vibrant colors should have been a light to stand out from the rest of this dreary landscape, but they too were suffocated by the gray. To the man walking through the ruins of the city, the gray was commonplace. After all, the sun hadn't shone for 1,000 years. The man walked with anger and purpose. He knew exactly who he was and where he was going. His mind was set only on the dark deed that needed to be done, and when he thought of the person who had wronged him, his teeth gritted. Vengeance burned in this man's heart, complete and utter dedication to his goal. He would take his revenge, and then he would be satisfied. But now, that man is dead. What? That can't be right. His thoughts and memories exploded around him, drifting away before his eyes. His now spectral arms slipped out of his body, and he felt the burdens of the mortal coil fall away. Warm, sticky blood poured out of his corpse, spilling onto the ground around him. The man was a spirit now, free of body and mind. No, I can't die yet. I still have to... Already his memories slipped away from him like dust through his fingers. I have to remember. I can't let him get away with this. The man once walked with purpose and anger. The man once knew who he was and where he was going. His vengeance was an endless drive. He yearned to bring justice to who? Who wronged me? Who killed me? The spirit grasped for floating memories, all the while drifting further away from his body. There was blood, so much blood, an enormous piece of metal sticking from his stomach. The spirit saw his body, that once wore as a discarded suit, laying on the ground. He felt a pull from the other world, lulling him away from the earth. I can't leave. I have to remember. And then the memories flooded back to him. The man came to an ancient road, one cracked and covered in moss and ruin. The faint sound of a rumbling beast echoed throughout the empty street. The beast came closer, its eyes gleaming bright in the distance. It came closer, driving right up next to the man. Was it a beast? No, it was a truck. The spirit floated above his corpse. He lunged towards it, resisting the forces trying to pry him away from this world. He focused on his purposeless rage, refusing to have his vengeance stolen from him. It can't all have been for nothing. I will hold on. The truck opened its doors, and out of it stepped lizard men. Scaly green creatures, eyes dark and beady. Their hands were claw-like, their feet bare and rough, green tails protruding from their rough brown cloaks. Each held a makeshift sword, a handle with a piece of scrap metal welded onto it. They stepped out of their truck and surrounded the man. They hissed as they closed in on him, and no level of reaction, timing, smarts, or agility could have saved him. One stepped towards him and stabbed him through the stomach. He groaned, he blinked, and then the lizard men were gone, and then he was gone. He was dead. It can't all have been for nothing. The spirit fought the pull of the heavens. His ghostly limbs thrashed against the force that wanted him to leave the world. But he could not. His business was unfinished. Rage built up inside the spirit and burst out of his mouth. It can't all be for nothing. A psychic girl had been walking for some time. Her legs were weary and her eyes were weak. She ran her finger against a trunk that had fallen, its bark infested with flesh worms. Then she heard the spiritual scream, one of rage and helplessness, and she walked towards the struggling spirit. His body shone out a mystic blue, cutting through the dreary gray of the world. She watched him reach for his body. She heard him yelling for a second chance, and she decided to help. She stuck out a finger, and a tendril of energy appeared at her fingertip. It curved, snake-like, towards the spirit, and wrapped around its legs. The spirit stopped struggling. He welcomed her guidance. The energy was an anchor that would prevent him from leaving the world, and it guided him back to his body. He touched the corpse's face with sadness. He could not re-enter, not without help. The psychic girl was a self-proclaimed necromancer, a master over the dead. She could hear spirits, and she could sense their wishes, and never before had she had an opportunity like this one. She held out another finger, and another tendril of energy wrapped around the corpse. Then, in one motion, she combined the two beings into one, the spirit once again reuniting with its bloody counterpart. The psychic girl put down her hand, and the dead body sat up. He swallowed and took in a mouthful of air. "I'm alive," he inhaled. A rush of sensation washed over him. He felt again, he smelt again, he tasted the cool air. "Not quite," said the girl. The man lifted once more into the air. His hands were still luminescent. His body was still transparent. But no longer did he sense the pull of the other world. "What did you do?" he said. "I saved your life. Well, your soul at least. Then I bound your soul to your corpse," she said. He looked at her enormous white eyes, absent of pupils or irises. It was an enchanting, simple white that glowed with appreciation of her work. "Thank you," he breathed. "No," said the psychic girl. "Thank you for being my new ghost slave." The ghost's eyes widened. He tried to get away, but he didn't know whether he should run or fly. He was in between being a corpse and a spirit, and the makeshift sword was still stabbed through his stomach. He tried to walk, but he couldn't move his legs. He tried to fly, but he hadn't been a spirit long enough to know how. He was helpless as the psychic girl lifted her finger again. A spectral coil of chains wrapped around his leg, and then around her arm. "That's to make sure you don't leave me," she said. The ghost blinked. He moved his leg, and as it moved, the shackle moved with it. "You're bound to me now. You can't leave me like everyone else did. You're staying with me here. You're to protect me. You're my slave, you're my bodyguard, you're whatever I want you to be, got it? Or else I'll send you right back to the great beyond, got it?" The girl's voice was high. Her manner suggested she was under 16. Blonde locks of short hair hung from her head, and her eyes must have been 3 times the sizes of the ghost's. "Now," said the psychic girl, "who are you?" The ghost floated into the air. "I don't know. I forgot my name when I died." The absurdity of the situation was lost on him. "Who are you?" The psychic girl scratched her chin. "I'm the master here. I ask you the questions." The ghost looked sad. He'd been given a new lease on life, but as a slave instead of a way of vengeance. He couldn't even remember who he wanted vengeance on. Now he was a mangled, half-ghost, half-corpse. "Either way, you saved my life. You gave me a second chance. I would follow you whether or not I was your slave." The ghost bowed humbly. "Of course you would," smirked the psychic girl. "Well, let's go, you little weird ghosty. We've got a lot of work to do." The psychic girl walked off with the ghost trailing after.